Hello ladies and gentlemen, this is Blue Maxima, and I couldn't leave you without that classic sound before booting up a classic game. This is Syphon Filter. So, Syphon Filter is a third-person shooter from back in 1999, but it also had two sequels in 2000 and 2001. There were also other sequels later on, like the Omega Strain, Dark Mirror, and Logan Shadow, but I just wanted to talk mainly about the original trilogy, because the original trilogy probably remains my favourite of the series for multiple reasons, and we'll get into why once the actual gameplay footage starts up. Not actually that much in the way of options or anything like that. I have to go uninvert my aim immediately when I start the mission because, well, I aim in the wrong direction. But, well, that's a thing that I do. So, the game is as I said before, a third-person shooter, but it's got a lot of really unique things about it, which I actually really appreciate, especially from a game back in 1999 when they were still trying to figure out how to do third-person shooters, especially on console. And, well, while it did end up eventually inheriting the same sort of control scheme you would see on things like first-person shooters, I still think that Syphon Filter is not only unique, but I think it's unique in a way that deserves being looked at again, because it's a really enjoyable series even today for what it does differently in comparison to other third-person shooters. So, let me talk about the major difference before I really, continue waxing lyrical on this PlayStation game that looks so blocky that it's made out of Legos. So, this game's main system of targeting people is via the targeting system. And when you hold the R1 button, you'll lock onto an enemy and you'll see a target meter that goes up and down depending on whether or not you're facing the enemy, how close you are, how fast you're moving, and whether or not the enemy is doing the same thing. And so, when you fire off a shot, that meter determines the chance you have of actually hitting the enemy and doing damage. You can hit the enemy while the target meter is lower than halfway, but it's very unlikely. You want that meter to be as full as possible, which you can do by standing still, crouching,
I found
not
the first
moving,
group of patients.
Basically.
I'm going to administer the vaccine,
And
but I don't know
when
if they're
you
going
fire
to
off the shot, you'll do damage, and of course, if you damage an enemy enough, you will kill them. However, the way the enemies work in this game is that they fight you too. Which is, they fight you in exactly the same way. They've got a danger meter, which works in exactly the same way. If you're standing still, if you're standing out in the open, they can target you, and they can shoot at you. However, they can't actually hit you until that meter is full red and glowing. So, you have the opportunity to do things like swap between cover and run away before you get hit, even when you're out in the open, which is an absolutely fantastic little mechanic, especially in the sort of ecosphere of third-person shooters that we're in today. So if you think about it for a second, in most third-person shooters today, and even the latest Syphon Filter games, like the ones on PSP, the idea is that if you're out in the open, you'll get shot, you'll take a hit, and you'll lose health, or armor, or whatever it is. You've got armor, and then you've got health in this game. And if you run out of health, you die, but you can replenish your flak jacket, but you can only replenish your flak jacket. You can't get your health back until a significant jump in, location, or story change, or what have you. But yeah, in those games, you're out of cover, someone shoots at you, you get hit instantly, and that's basically it. In this game, it actually lets you run and gun. It actually lets you pop out of cover, take target of one enemy, fire away, kill him, take target of the next enemy, do the same thing, and then roll away and hide behind cover before the third guy can realistically get a shot off at you. It's helped out by the fact that it's got an absolutely ridiculous button, which is the circle button on PlayStation controllers, but on the Xbox 360 pad I'm playing this on, it's the B button. It's a commando roll, and it looks silly, but it actually helps you out, because if you press the button while you're being targeted, it actually reduces the enemy's danger meter, along the same lines as getting behind cover and ducking and what have you. So combining things like strafing around, rolling behind cover, and doing all sorts of those little things, it all works together really, really well. It lends to these absolutely fantastic action movie moments throughout the first game in the series where you'll do things like, you know how in that scene in Die Hard towards the very end, where John like shoots Hans in the head, and then turns and shoots his other friend straight between the eyes. You can do that in this game, and you can actually do it pretty regularly. It's fantastic. I'm legitimately not lying when I say you can just do, like, stop in the middle of a field, hold the target button, bang, bang, hold it again, bang, bang, and take down 2 dudes on either side of you. Or pull out a shotgun, run up to a dude, blast him in the face, then look at his friend and go, "You're next," wink, bang. It's great. There are very few third-person shooters these days where you can realistically do that with. I mean, I know it's not like, say, the Doom of third-person shooters, for example. It's not the best third-person shooter out there, but the system is so creative and so enjoyable that I find myself coming back to this game regularly just for the opportunity to do something like that. Compare it to a third-person shooter these days, which inherited like the move with one stick, look with the other stick sort of mechanics about them, where you can pop dudes in the head again and again and again and again and basically not break a sweat. In this game, you've got mechanics that are helping you achieve it, but at the same time, thanks to the fact that you've got things like the target meter and the fact that some enemies have flak jackets, which we'll get to, it's hard, but it's not impossible, and it's way more satisfying to pull off as a result. And it still makes these games fun to play to this day, even if they are a little bit clunky, because for a PlayStation game, these used everything. You have the R1 button for targeting, you have the L1 button that you can use to do precise shots, and you can use your strafe buttons, which are L2 and R2, to strafe left and right, and you can also use them while you're doing precise aim, and you can poke your head out to the left and the right as well, so you can hide behind corners and do peeking shots, which is fantastic for enemies that have flak jackets, because later on in each game in the series, they start adding flak jackets to enemies, which basically means you can't do like the run up to them and blast away sort of attacks, unless you've got weapons that can go right through flak jackets, which they give you from time to time, don't get me wrong. Because the levels are big, you can hunt around them for a lot of goodies, and they are all very useful, especially guns like the K3G4, which will let you tear right through flak jackets like they're not even there. It's great. So you've got all sorts of different weapons throughout this series, and there's one that gets a fair amount of use throughout this video, at least a couple of times, and we all know what it is. It's the taser. It's a weapon that sets enemies on fire and leaves them screaming in pain. That's not even a joke. It happens. It's later on in this video, trust me. So, you end up using all sorts of different weaponry in this game. You got your simple pistols and your sniper rifles, which are basically just pistols but more gaudy. You've got your basic set of assault rifles. You've got grenade launchers. You get a flamethrower at one point in Syphon Filter 2 for no reason at all. It's not like I care, but I just thought I'd bring it up. And there's all sorts of like neat little weapons you get to run around and shoot people with. And the variety is kept up by all sorts of different locations and set pieces. But I like how they treat set pieces in Syphon Filter more than they do pretty much every other game that I've played that has set pieces. Like, it's very averse to making a big deal of a set piece if it has one. Like, there's a gigantic bridge, but they just treat it like a bridge. There's one that takes place inside the Freedom Memorial, and in a regular game, like, in this game, you'll see it later on in this video, but in this video, you'll see the Freedom Memorial without its head, right? And most other games would draw attention to it, like there'd be dramatic angles of Abraham Lincoln's head or whoever it is lying on the floor, and then like shots of the headless body, and then shots of the guy who did it, and stuff like that. This game is just like, nah, we'll just have them walk around each other, talk for a little bit, and then you get to kill him. That's something I really appreciate about these games. They don't make a big deal out of it, and it makes doing things like scaling a gigantic bridge, running into a dinosaur in the middle of Dinorama, and just all sorts of little set pieces as you go throughout these games feel a lot more personal. And definitely not feel like overblown or overplayed or what have you. They're great. Not to mention the level design, which is a lot like Perfect Dark, if you've played those games before, where they're pretty much linear, but they can feel pretty damn claustrophobic and maze-like sometimes, especially if you aren't particularly careful with how you go about looking for objectives. In this footage in particular, I managed to miss a couple of guys, which meant that I just kind of had to go, well, I guess I'm moving on to another mission then, because I didn't really have a choice in the matter. I do that every time I come through this level, despite the fact that I should know it back to front by this point. But still, the levels are fun to trawl through, and they've got lots of little secrets hidden around them as well. There are multiple grenade launchers, including one I found entirely by coincidence. There's tons of little Easter eggs as well. There's tons of stuff in the later games as well, like especially Syphon Filter 3. Syphon Filter 2 added a head-to-head multiplayer mode, which, not great, but still fun for a laugh. The cool thing, though, was that Syphon Filter 3 added minigames. So it took things like multiplayer maps and old maps from the previous games and gave you objectives to do, whether it be shoot targets, eliminate a bunch of enemies, try and get through an area without setting off any enemies, and a couple of other sort of missions like that as well. And you'd unlock things like maps and mission types by going through the main campaign and finding these Easter eggs. So it gave you even more of a reason to go back and look for these Easter eggs as well. And it just goes to show that they really had an eye for level design. Especially later on. I mean, the first game is a bit monolithic and maze-like, but they do get better in it in the second and third games, although they do also get a bit more linear as well. But, I mean, it's a bit an if or thing, and I'm not particularly opposed to either side. There are advantages and disadvantages to both. So I'll give them credit where credit's due. They did pretty good on all three games, despite the fact that, you know, things changed between them. The overall story's a bit of a schlep, though. It's basically just secret agent hunting down virus in the first one. There's a couple of twists and turns here and there, but nothing you can't see coming from a mile away. The second one and the third one get a little bit more in depth. The second one is a bit more of an on-the-run fugitive story, which is actually pretty engaging in the grand scheme of things. The third one is a sort of in medias res, where you've got missions taking place in the past, while you've also got missions taking place in the present. And they're all enjoyable, especially the cutscenes. Now, the voice acting in these games is actually pretty good, at least in my personal opinion. A lot of people call the voice acting in these games shitty, but Gabe's voice actor especially, I think he does a really good job for 1999 to 2001. Like, it's legitimately impressive. And the weird thing is, this guy has never had another acting job. His only acting job was Syphon Filter 1 through 3. He went on to become an MMA fighter. Oh lord, yeah, we got an upset dog. Anyway, as I was saying, we got... God, I've lost my train of thought. But yeah, you've got him as a voice actor for Gabe, and I think he does a really good job for someone who's never had, like, voice acting jobs before or since, which is great. You know, thumbs up to him. Leon's voice actor changes every goddamn game. That's not even a lie. Syphon Filter 1, 2, 3, Syphon Filter 1, 2, 3, the Omega Strain and Dark Mirror all had different Leons, so I can kind of understand that. There is also Teresa, who comes in 2, sticks around until, like, you know, the very end of the series. She's great. There is a guy named Lawrence who shows up every now and again who's great, and they've got, like, more professional voice actors later on. Like, they replaced Gabe's voice with the voice of Ratchet from the Omega Strain onwards, and he does a good job, but nothing beats the guy's original voice for me personally. It's worth noting that Colonel Campbell, voice actor, his voice actor is actually in Syphon Filter Dark Mirror as another character who sounds almost exactly like Colonel Campbell. Because why the hell not, right? That's just a thing that happens, I suppose. I don't even remember if there's music in this part of the video. I'm just letting you listen to the music for a little bit because the music in these games are great. It's just the right mix of techno thriller to really make the series have its own little sort of soundtrack style that got kind of lost as the series went on, especially when you got to, like, Dark Mirror and Logan's Shadow. Now, I was a little bit disappointed with this myself because Syphon Filter, the Omega Strain's main theme, and just a bit of its soundtrack was absolutely fantastic. It went a little bit more movie about it, but the theme of Syphon Filter, the Omega Strain, absolutely perfect. And the funny thing is, it was actually composed by the same guy who composed the X-Files theme. That's not even a joke. It's the absolute truth. Still, the soundtrack in these games are great, and I still listen to them semi-regularly whenever I'm in the mood for, you know, in-depth and enjoyable techno thriller music. So yeah, that's basically everything I've got to say about Syphon Filter. It's a wonderful little trilogy, at least on the PlayStation 1. While I would call the 2 games on PSP actually pretty good third-person shooters in and of themselves, they don't have the same systems as Syphon Filter does. They're definitely more along the lines of traditional third-person shooters, which is why I tend to like these ones a bit more, the ones on the PlayStation, just because, well, they're just different and they're way more fun as a result, for some reason. There is also the Omega Strain, which works under the same mechanics that the first 3 Syphon Filters does, but it's in a situation where if it came out a few years later on the PlayStation 3, people probably would have loved it, but it came out on the PlayStation 2, which I was never actually able to get online until it was way too late for it, so yeah, that's kind of unfortunate because the way the Omega Strain worked is that it was actually a 4-player online co-op shooter where you needed your teammates to do other objectives, and enemies respawn infinitely. So if you try and play that game solo by yourself, it doesn't work too well because there's infinite enemies, you don't have infinite ammo, and they will just constantly come at you, and you still can't even do everything in the game because there are objectives that are locked off to you if you don't have a friend with you, which means that you can't get the maximum level in game anymore. Wonderful. Great. Again, if it came out in like the online era, it would have been much more warmly received. And the funny thing is, it almost was an always online game back in like 04 when it came out, because they literally had to just stamp on that single player mode during the last few months of development, and it turned out to be crap. But yeah, if you can sort out or find a copy of Syphon Filters 1 through 3 in any way that you see fit, including emulation, because, well, that's what I'm doing. This is via BizHawk, because I do not like the way that RetroArch does its thing, and BizHawk uses the same emulator core, so it's like, why not? But if you can find any way to play it, I highly recommend it. The controls are a little bit weird, and in the first game, for some reason, they start out inverted even after you load the game, so I would recommend making sure that you unset that if you're used to that, but other than that, they are absolutely great games. The controls work great once you get used to them. The action is really enjoyable and is backed up by a unique and thoroughly enjoyable set of gameplay systems. It uses everything on the controller as well, so it's not like they wasted anything. The stories, while they are a bit schlock, they are actually pretty well presented, at least for the time, and there's a bunch of different levels and level variety, especially when you get onto Syphon Filter 3 with all the mini-games that it has, that gives it even a bit more of a set of long legs. It's really enjoyable. That's pretty much all I've got to say about it. I fully recommend you go and pick it up. This has been Blue Maxima, and I will see you all next time.
Anton Gerdue. I hope Romer's paying you enough to die for him.
Gabriel Logan, always the optimist. Look around, Logan. This hall contains a mosaic depicting the entire history of your country's wars and aggression. We are about to make an addition to it.
I don't think so, Gerdue. It ends here.
Gabe, your dude's wearing full body armor. You've got to find a weak spot.
You can't. You're gonna need. You're going to burn. You can't hide forever. There's nowhere to. Where are you, Logan?
Gabe,
Check.
Hold still. You can't win, Logan. Where are you, Logan? You can't run forever! There's no... You can't hide forever! Where do you go, Logan?
Gabe, are you all right?
He's finished.
We've analyzed blood taken from Romer's men. It contains
Fagan's heading for the Stonehenge exhibit. I'm checking their security protocols.
Right.
The entrance to the dinosaur.
Right.
Tell me where the virus labs are.
I don't know.
Tell me, or I will kill you.
There goes Fagin. Is Mara still alive?
Yes. Now to get some answers.
Hurry. More security is on its way.